Hello everyone, this is Sid here and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing my first ever official redraw or redesign, so without further ado, let's get started. This right here is the picture that I'm going to be redrawing and redesigning. So if you watched my other video about my old cringy OCR, you might recognize this one. But this was going to be the cover for my book, or not like the actual cover, but like just an idea, I guess, or like a concept. But I made this one on June 19th and I redrew it on July 14th, so I was like a month late, but I think that's okay. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do an analysis of what all I think is wrong about this picture. First of all, we'll start with the small things and then we'll get into the big things. So for the small things, we have the background. If you can see, it is not very blended well because I was trying to do like a gradient, but at that time I did not know how to do a gradient properly. So you can clearly see like the line where each color is. So I would blend those out further if I was redoing it. Same thing with like the clouds and the sun, is that the sun is not blended well, so it's literally just like a circle in the sky. And then the cloud is not blended well either, neither is that little moon right there. And all these little specks that I have is sort of like stars, they're not blended very well either. So I would just like blend out the background more. These trees in the distance, they just don't really look detailed enough, and they're also incredibly bright green. They look like almost unnatural how green they are. And I would just put some shading around them just to give them like more of a three-dimensional element. Moving on to like the horse right here. There's nothing wrong with this horse. I would just change the color because I don't like it being white. I know that it is just an opinion-based thing, but I would rather my horse be a different color because I wanted it to be white when I wrote the first draft of this book, but now that I've edited it, I've made the horse like a different color. I made it brown. I made it a Appaloosa, if you know what those look like. They're like brown and they have like white spots on them. So I would change the horse to be those colors and those patterns. And I might like reposition the horse slightly, but I like how his pose is. I think it looks very dynamic, so I like the horse in that regard. I just don't like his colors. But I think that he should have some shading around him just to like separate him from the background. For the girl, who has our most problems, the girl, she looks roughly like this, but at the same time, not at all. The thing that bothers me the most about the girl is her coloration. I do not like the yellow armor because it's supposed to be like gold, you know, for like the regal aspects, but it just bothers me looking at how bright her armor is. It doesn't look very realistic to me. Also because her armor is like skin tight in some places. Like in no fantasy universe would you be wearing armor that's like this thin. You'd be wearing like multiple thick layers so that if someone hit you, they would not like immediately slash through your armor and break into your skin. So I would definitely give her like more layers on her armor. Like how these are up on her shoulders, I would put that but like all along her arm. And then like how these are on her hips, I would put that but like all along her arm. And then like, just speaking of her hips, because like the proportions on this one are very, very bad. You can see like her hips are like twice the width of like her chest, which is just not accurate. So I would probably like make it thinner. And then her pose is pretty good, but I'd probably give her a more like closed in pose because in this book, her personality at the beginning is she's very antisocial and not very confident in herself. And as the book goes along, as the series goes along, because it's a trilogy, she gains more confidence in herself. So I would give her like more of a closed off pose for this first book to show that in the first book she feels less confident about herself, and then like in the next book and then the book after that, her pose will get more and more like this to show that she's getting more and more confident about herself. So those are the things that I would change, and now I'm going to show you my process for doing that. So the first time that I drew this cover idea, cover concept, I drew the horse first and then I drew the girl. But this time I decided to draw the girl first and then draw the horse because I knew that the girl would probably take a much longer time than the horse would. So basically I just started off with my sketch and I drew a body based off of a Xenoblade character, because the first picture was also based off of a Xenoblade character. She was based off of Mithra. So I decided to base this pose off of Pyra because I don't know about Pyra and Mithra's personalities because I've actually never played Xenoblade before. But Pyra's pose is a lot more like closed off than Mithra's pose is. So I decided to give her that more like closed off pose. And it also helped me with her proportions because while Pyra's proportions are still like a bit wonky, I was able to make my drawing's proportions a bit better. So her hips weren't quite as big and all of that. And basically what I did first was, since I wanted the armor to be more layered and be more like thick and more protective, I decided to draw a few pieces of the armor, about 3 of them, like the one that she has on her hip, the one that she has on her shoulder, and the one that she has on her like elbow. I decided to draw those separately onto separate layers and then copy and paste them. So basically that's what I did, and I was able to make like similar looking pieces of armor very quickly and efficiently. So I pasted those into like a line along her arm and then like a line down the side of her leg. And then I combined some other design elements. I added the boots that Nia has because I think Nia has pretty cool boots. And I also added like the belt and the weapons that Nia has, because I did want her to have like some sort of weapons on her hip along with weapons in her hands, of course, which is her big Xenoblade sword. I kept Mithra's hair because Mithra does have like longer hair than Pyra does. And in my story, the girl starts out with longer hair, and then like in the second book, her hair becomes shorter because it gets cut by like glass. There's an explosion and glass like almost kills her by slashing her in the neck, but instead it just slashes across the back of her hair. And then she decides to cut it so it won't be so like rugged. But in the first book she has longer hair. So I decided to give her Mithra styled hair instead of Pyra styled hair, which is the same type of hair that I did last time. After that, I was pretty much done with all of like the structural composition of things for my girl, for her line art. And once I outlined her completely, which was the longest part of the whole entire process, because that took me an incredibly long time to do, I was finally ready for the coloring. Basically, for the coloring, in my first one, of course, she had the yellow armor, which was the bane of my existence and the one particular reason why I wanted to redraw this. So I knew that I wanted to give her a silver armor, or at least some sort of color of gray, because of course that's like a more natural color, and it just looks more like realistic, like how things would actually be in like the medieval and fantasy times. Because I was originally basing my armor off of the armor from Dragon Quest Builders 2, which is actually one of my favorite games and one of the things that my book is based off of. But the more that I wrote it, the more that I realized like I could expand on things and change things and just like add other details and just make the story different and unique in my own special way. And nowadays there's like zero connection between them. Like there's nothing that they share in common because I've just expanded it so far that it's like unrecognizable. But that was where it started. It started as Dragon Quest Builders 2. But in that game, there's a piece of armor that's like blue, gold, and red. So I basically wanted to do that for the first one. But this one I just decided to like completely scrap the idea and go with like the normal gray and silver fantasy medieval colors. But I did decide that there would be a good accent color, because accent colors always give things a lot more personality and stuff. So I decided that the accent color for her armor was going to be red, because really there's 2 groups of people, of course, who are the ones that are sort of at war with each other. Her side of the army is red, and then the other side of the army is blue. So her people have red accents, and then the other people have blue accents. So I decided to put red in as many places as possible. I put it along her cape, I put it on her jewels, on her tiara, and on her belt, and on her necklace, and on the 2 little cross things. Now, my characters aren't Christian, but I wanted them to have some sort of like religious symbol, but I don't really know what that would be. maybe like some sort of other form of a cross. But no, they're not a Christian. They just have that as a symbol of their religion for the time being, until I can think of a better one. I decided to make her hair a bit more of like a more natural colored brown, because it didn't really bother me that much in the first one, but her hair in the first one was more of like a chestnut colored brown, or like a reddish brown, which is not like how her character is in the actual book. And her skin was what bothered me a lot, because going into that old drawing, I knew I wanted her skin to be a bit darker, but I guess I was just like too afraid to go completely darker. So I decided to make her skin a whole lot darker in this one, but also just like a different tone, because the tone in the old one was too orange. So her skin looks like plasticky, like she's some sort of like Barbie doll in the old one. So I decided to make it a lot more of like an actual like olive or like almond color in the newer one. And I decided to make her eyes a lot darker, because she does have blue eyes, and in the first one you can see that one better because her eyes are like a lot bluer, but they looked almost like too blue, and I didn't really like that. So I decided to make them more of like a bluish gray, or like a deeper, darker blue color. And I think that really worked out well, because I think that is good. And I think that she looks a bit older in the newer one, because this character, she's supposed to be 18 in the first book, and then she ages as the books progress, ending when she's about like 21. But in the first picture, I can't really gauge ages that well. I feel like in the first picture she looks like 16 maybe, and then this picture she looks more like how her age actually is. But it might just be because she looks more like serious. So I think I did do a good job making her look like less confident in herself, more closed off, and more like unsure of how things are going to be. Next, I moved on to her horse, who is of course the next piece of the picture. And her horse, I did do the Appaloosa coloring and patterns. So I was able to skip the line art step, let's go, because when I was drawing the first one, the old one, I copy and pasted my line art into a different canvas so I could save it as like a sketch, I guess. So I was able to keep that line art and then just color it in. So I colored it in with the Appaloosa colors, which are like usually brown as a base, and then like some darker browns on the mane, the muzzle, the legs, the tail, all of that. And then Appaloosas have white spots all around them. They have lots on their forehead and on their head in general, and then like some on their body. But the place that they have the most is on their butt, which you can't see in the picture because the girl is covering up his butt, but I did draw all those white spots on his butt. But with that, I was finished with my horse, and with my girl, I was ready to import the background. So basically, I created the background both times by myself, but I had copy and pasted it from a different one, because if you notice in my artwork, I use the same backgrounds almost every single time. I'm not very creative when it comes to backgrounds, just because like that's not what I want to spend my time doing. So I copy and pasted this forest background that I made. It's a lot less brighter green, it's a lot like duller, which I think is better, because the other one was like so neon looking green that it was just like, ugh, it was grossing me out. It was like, why are these trees so green? So I gave them like a lot more of like a mossy colored green. And of course these trees do have some like shading on the outside of them, so they have some sort of separation. Even if the shading is not how I would do it these days, it's still alright. And then I decided to blend out the background a lot more to make it less of a obvious like me trying to do a gradient and more of like me doing an actual gradient, which is amazing of course. And I made a sun in the background. I blended out the sun. I put some streams of light coming down just to give it that light look, because the book is actually called The Legend of Light. So I decided to give it some light to make it look more like that. And then I decided not to give it any clouds because I was kind of struggling with the clouds, and I decided that instead of doing them like how I did earlier and like risking having that point deducted from my rubric, I would just not include the clouds at all. I do have a clouds brush on Procreate, but that just was not working for me. But speaking of title, the other one did not have the title on it. I'm not exactly sure why, but I decided to indeed include the title on this one because I thought it was just a necessary piece of the puzzle. So the title, of course, is The Legend of Light, like I just said, and it is the first book, so book 1, and then by Syd. I'm probably going to go by a pen name when I publish this, but I'm not exactly sure, so Syd for the time being. And I put it in this nice fantasy looking font because that's just how it would be presented. And I put some shading around it so you could see it better. I think you can read it pretty well. I put some shading around the girl and the horse. I did realize at this time that the girl's hair and the horse's like body were too similar of colors, but I wasn't really sure how I would change that now. I could change that in the future if I do a third redraw of this. That could be a thing that I keep in mind, but I'm not exactly sure for right now. And I think that was all that I did. I was pretty happy with this. I think that it was pretty good. My friends agreed with me. My mom agreed with me. One of my friends did not respond, which means that she probably didn't agree with me. But I'm not exactly sure why, because I just feel like it's objectively a whole lot better than the first one. And less people said, like, I like both of them a lot, but I like the second one better because it has so much more details. And really, they both have the same amount of details. It's just you can't see the details on the first one because I did all the line art in colors, and then on this one I did all the line art in black. So the black line art really highlights the details, whereas the colored line art really like makes them fade away and become more subtle. So I do think that as my art has improved, I have realized like, hey, sometimes being basic can be good, and sometimes it's better to just use darker colored line art so that you can actually like see all of the things that the line art is highlighting. So yeah. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it and you were not too terribly bored. I try to keep it as fun and entertaining as possible, of course. And if you did enjoy it, please remember to like and subscribe because it always helps me out so much when you do, and I really do appreciate it. If you click the notification bell, you can stay tuned and get notified every time that I post new content. So I hope that if you are a young artist out there, then if you have something that you have that is old and you don't like how it looks, you can see when that drawing becomes 1 year old or maybe even just like a few months old, and on the anniversary of that, you can say, hey, I'm going to redraw this and see how much I have improved. Because if anything can make you feel better after feeling discouraged about old, crusty, cringeworthy art, it is redrawing that art and seeing it better than ever before. So I hope that you all have a great rest of your day and great rest of your summer, and I will see you in the next video. Please comment down below if you like the old one or the new one better, and goodbye!